Samantha moved through the polished marble corridors of Harrington Tower, her mop swishing rhythmically across the floors. At 31, she had grown used to being invisible. Executives in tailored suits passed by without a glance. Secretaries on their phones barely noticed her presence, and even the building security seemed to see her only as part of the background. Yet Samantha took pride in her work. She cleaned meticulously, organized supply closets with precision, and ensured that the building ran smoothly from the shadows. Her life outside the office mirrored her work ethic: quiet, self-contained, and independent. She paid her bills on time, had a small but comfortable apartment in South Boston, and spent her evenings reading, coding, and taking online courses in IT and systems management, skills that, until now, had gone completely unrecognized. Her co-workers often whispered about her behind her back, dismissing her as just a janitor or the girl with the mop. They never knew that behind those quiet eyes was a mind that could solve problems and think strategically. Samantha had learned long ago that being invisible was safer than asking for recognition, and she had accepted it. But that morning, something shifted. The calm hum of the building was shattered by sharp beeps and frantic voices from the executive floor. Phones rang incessantly, and monitors flashed red with error messages. Samantha paused mid-step, her mop resting lightly against the wall, and glanced toward the chaos. The company's central data system had crashed, and the team had just discovered it hours before a critical investor presentation. Executives shouted at IT staff who ran frantically between servers. "We can't have this happen," one barked. "If we don't fix it, the investors walk," another screamed. Samantha felt a familiar spark of awareness. She had seen these kinds of system errors before in her own coding experiments. She could trace the problem, identify the bottleneck, and restore functionality, if only she could act. For the first time in years, Samantha's hidden talents aligned perfectly with an urgent, high-stakes situation. She knew that every second counted, and the decision before her was stark. Stay invisible, as she always had, or step forward and risk exposure. Her heart raced. In the corridors, executives panicked, IT staff scrambled helplessly, and the investors were already en route. But Samantha's mind moved methodically, already mapping out the solution in her head. This was the moment that could change everything. Samantha stood in the corner of the executive floor, her mop leaning against the wall, watching the chaos unfold. Phones were ringing incessantly. Monitors flashed with red error messages, and people darted between terminals in a panic. The air was thick with tension, punctuated by the harsh tones of shouting and the frantic clicking of keyboards. Executives barked orders at IT staff who seemed completely overwhelmed, trying desperately to fix the system before the critical investor meeting scheduled in just under 2 hours. "We're losing the investor," one shouted. Another added, "I don't care how, just get it fixed now." Whispers floated through the room, and Samantha caught snippets. "Just the cleaning lady wandering around. Does she even know what she's doing here? Imagine thinking you could help, huh? Look at her standing there with a mop." Even the CEO, a sharp-featured man named Henry Carlson, had thrown a sarcastic glance her way earlier. "Maybe the janitor can wave a magic wand and fix it," he muttered under his breath, clearly trying to mask his rising panic. Samantha's chest tightened. The weight of years of invisibility and dismissal pressed down on her. She had spent countless hours learning, coding, understanding systems, and building skills no one acknowledged. And now, those very skills could save the company if she had the courage to act. But self-doubt crept in like a shadow. What if they laugh? What if they say, "Who does she think she is?" Images of past dismissals flashed through her mind. The sneers, the condescending remarks, the invisible treatment. Staying invisible had always been safe. No one could humiliate her if she didn't put herself forward. The IT lead, a brash young man named Tom, stomped past, muttering, "We don't have time for distractions. Everyone stays out of the way, especially her." Samantha flinched at the emphasis. She clenched her fists, feeling the familiar sting of underestimation. Her rational mind argued for caution. "Stay quiet. Let it handle it. It's safer. You don't need anyone noticing you." But her gut told a different story. She could fix this. She had to. Samantha weighed her options. If she stayed invisible, the investor meeting could fail. The company could lose millions. Her chance to show her worth would vanish. If she stepped forward, she risked humiliation if she failed. Executives could mock or dismiss her again. Every eye would be on her, and failure would be very public. Her mind raced, and her pulse quickened. Around her, tension mounted. Executives' voices rose, the IT team scrambled, and the investor's limousine had already arrived outside. The building vibrated with anxiety. Every passing second magnified the stakes. Then came a moment of clarity. She thought of her years of preparation, her quiet mastery, and the personal pride she had always carried in her work. This was not about ego. This was about doing what needed to be done. And if she didn't act now, no one else would. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. Every whispered joke, every dismissive glance became fuel instead of fear. Her mind sharpened. The solution was clear. Trace the system error, identify the misconfiguration, and restore functionality before it was too late. Samantha stepped toward the server room, unnoticed by most, blending into the background while her resolve surged forward. Each step felt deliberate, almost ritualistic, a quiet declaration that she was no longer just invisible. As she reached the servers, she paused briefly, feeling the full weight of what she was about to do. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, the humming of the machines blending with her racing heartbeat. Around her, executives shouted and panicked, completely unaware that the solution rested in the hands of the one they had always ignored. She glanced back once, taking in the room full of skeptical, anxious faces. Then she turned, focused, determined, ready to act. Failure was a risk, yes, but inaction was unthinkable. With that, Samantha began to analyze the system, tracing error codes, checking logs, and methodically isolating the problem. Each keystroke was deliberate, each calculation precise. She was working behind the scenes, alone against the clock, and the weight of responsibility only sharpened her focus. Minutes stretched into an eternity as she navigated the corrupted system. A misstep could cost millions. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm, methodical, and focused. Every so often someone glanced toward the server room. The CTO muttered, "Still nothing? I swear. Someone needs to fix this. Oh, wait, is she even?" Samantha ignored the doubt, the mockery, and the pressure. She had made her choice. She was stepping into the light that had always been denied to her, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Samantha crouched beside the humming servers, her hands moving deftly across the keyboard. Her mind worked like a finely tuned machine, scanning logs, following error codes, cross-referencing configuration files. She could feel the weight of every second pressing down on her, every misstep carrying the potential to not just fail, but to humiliate her publicly. The investor meeting was only 90 minutes away, and the entire company teetered on the edge of disaster. The IT team was still frantically typing commands at their consoles, but they were nowhere near finding the source of the crash. Whispers floated from the conference room beyond the glass wall, sharp tones carrying judgment, even though the staff didn't realize she could hear them. "Who does she think she is? Sticking her nose in?" one muttered. Samantha clenched her jaw, letting the irritation fuel her focus. Step by step, she isolated the corrupted nodes. Lines of red arrows flickered across the screen, each one a threat to the investor presentation and the millions at stake. She held her breath with every keystroke, double-checking her logic, ensuring no single miscalculation could compromise the system. She knew that if she succeeded, no one would believe it was her doing. If she failed, the blame would undoubtedly fall squarely on her. The seconds ticked by like hours, the room around her, oblivious to the calm precision at work behind the scenes. Samantha ran scripts she had written in her spare time, tools she had designed to track system anomalies quickly. She worked in silence, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythmic blinking of the server lights, each flash reminding her of the stakes. Gradually, the errors began to disappear. Red lines turned green. Monitors stabilized. The investor's lumen presence became less threatening as Samantha corrected node after node. She leaned back slightly, watching as the once chaotic network became orderly, functional, and ready to support the critical presentation. And then came the moment of tension that made her stomach tighten. A small misstep in the sequence, a misplaced command, could undo everything. She paused, mentally reviewing every step, careful not to rush. Her hands hovered over the keyboard as she confirmed the final correction, fingers trembling ever so slightly with anticipation. Then, she pressed enter. Across the office, executives paused mid-conversation. Monitors that had been flashing red errors now displayed fully operational systems. Phones stopped ringing. The buzz of panic subsided, replaced by confused murmurs. Henry Carlson, the CEO, leaned toward Evan, the CTO. Did they fix it?" he asked, voice uncertain, disbelief in his tone. Samantha knew it was time. She stepped forward, brushing imaginary dust from her uniform as though she were invisible once again, though now all eyes were on her. "I fixed the system," she said quietly, but firmly. "I traced the error to a misconfigured node and restored functionality." The room froze. Executives turned to her, some mouths opening and closing as if the sound itself had escaped them. Evan's face was pale. "Wait, you did this?" he stammered, a mixture of shock and awe in his eyes. "Yes," Samantha replied. She met their gaze without flinching. She had prepared for this moment, and now that it had come, she felt a strange surge of empowerment she had never experienced before. For the first time, her years of quiet competence, of learning, of preparing while no one looked, were recognized in real time. Henry Carlson's voice finally broke the silence. "All of you, listen up. This is Samantha, the janitor who just saved the company. I want everyone to understand what just happened here." Whispers erupted, some incredulous, others respectful. A few of the IT staff stared at her in disbelief, realizing that the very person they had dismissed as invisible had solved the problem that had baffled them. Samantha's chest swelled. She had always known her abilities, but now, she had proof that others could no longer ignore them. The hidden intelligence she had carried quietly for years was finally visible, undeniable, and powerful. She felt a shift inside her. A transformation. For years, she had measured her worth by invisibility, by blending in, by surviving in the background. But in this moment, she realized that she could no longer hide. She had contributed meaningfully, decisively, and without apology. She had stepped out of the shadows, and the world had taken notice. Evan approached her slowly, hesitating. "Samantha, I didn't think." His words faltered. She gave a small, calm smile. "I just did what needed to be done." It was simple, understated, but the weight of it was enormous. Samantha had acted not for recognition, but for responsibility. And in doing so, she had claimed a new place in the world she had once been invisible to. The executives began to nod, murmurs of approval spreading. Even those who had mocked her earlier couldn't deny the fact. Samantha had saved the company. And in that moment, she felt it, the first taste of true recognition, the validation of her intelligence, her perseverance, and her worth. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer overlooked. She was seen. Her confidence, long dormant, ignited. The quiet janitor, who had mopped floors in the shadows, had just become indispensable, and she would never underestimate her own value again. The next morning, Samantha arrived at the office to a different atmosphere. The corridors that had always been filled with hushed whispers and ignored footsteps now seemed charged with quiet curiosity and cautious respect. She noticed executives exchanging glances as she passed, their previous sneers replaced with polite nods or hesitant smiles. Henry Carlson, the CEO, approached her directly as she wiped down a conference room table. "Samantha," he said, voice steady but tinged with admiration, "the board wants to formally recognize your contribution. We'd like to offer you a promotion, one that reflects your capabilities, not your role as janitorial staff." Samantha blinked, momentarily stunned. She had imagined acknowledgement in her dreams, but nothing prepared her for this public validation. "Thank you," she said, finding her voice. "I appreciate it." Over the next few weeks, Samantha began transitioning into her new role. She led small initiatives, starting with updating internal workflow systems, streamlining processes that had frustrated teams for years. Colleagues who had once ignored her ideas now sought her input, some nervously, others genuinely curious. Even Tom, the IT lead who had dismissed her earlier, paused during meetings to ask for her opinion, and she could see a hint of respect in his eyes. Samantha felt a mix of emotions as she navigated this change. There was pride, yes, but also a lingering sting from the years of being overlooked. She thought of the countless times she had gone unnoticed, the jokes whispered behind her back, and the moment she had doubted herself. But now, she realized she didn't need revenge or approval from those who had belittled her. Instead, she chose self-respect and empowerment. She focused on her work, on proving to herself that she could succeed, without seeking validation from the people who had once underestimated her. Each small initiative she led, each problem she solved, cemented her confidence and transformed her relationship with the company. Samantha also began mentoring a few of the overlooked employees in the building, quietly sharing insights and encouraging them to step forward. She found joy in seeing others gain recognition for their talents, much like she had. Her own rise had not only opened doors for herself, but had begun to reshape the culture of the office. As she walked past the executive floor one afternoon, Samantha caught herself smiling at the memory of a time when she had felt invisible and powerless. The sense of isolation that had once defined her life was replaced by a quiet strength, an inner assurance that her abilities were valuable and her presence mattered. In these weeks of transition, Samantha realized that her true accomplishment wasn't the promotion or the praise, it was reclaiming her sense of self-worth. She no longer measured herself by the recognition of others but by what she could achieve and contribute. Her life in the building, once filled with invisible work, had transformed into one where she was actively shaping the company, respected not for her title, but for her skills, intelligence, and integrity. And for the first time in years, Samantha felt truly seen. Weeks turned into months, and Samantha's presence in the building had shifted from background noise to a quiet force of influence. She began mentoring employees who had always been overlooked, the interns who never spoke up in meetings, the administrative assistants whose ideas had been dismissed, the janitors and maintenance staff whose skills had gone unnoticed. She met with them one-on-one, often during quiet moments before the office opened or after it had emptied for the night. "Your ideas matter," she told a young IT technician named Ryan, who had been too timid to propose his workflow improvements. "You just have to have the courage to speak up and the confidence to trust your own skills." It wasn't just her words that mattered. It was her example. Samantha had been invisible herself, underestimated for years, and yet she had stepped forward and changed her own life. Slowly, she watched as the people she mentored began to step into their own voices, offering solutions in meetings, sharing insights that had been buried under years of being ignored. The executives started noticing the subtle shifts. Teams became more collaborative, problems were solved faster, and morale began to rise. Her story, the janitor who had saved the company and earned recognition, spread internally like a quiet legend. It became a reminder that talent could come from anywhere, that innovation and insight weren't limited to titles or a social standing. Samantha herself found a deep sense of emotional fulfillment. The respect she earned was not just professional but personal, validating the years she had dedicated to learning, problem-solving, and quietly honing her skills. She no longer measured her worth by others' perceptions, but by the impact she could make and the people she could lift along the way. Even her personal life began to improve. With newfound confidence, she started reconnecting with friends she had drifted from, attended professional networking events, and explored opportunities to further expand her career. She balanced her work with moments of quiet reflection, enjoying the simple satisfaction of knowing that her efforts made a tangible difference, not just in the company, but in the lives of the people around her. Samantha's journey from invisible janitor to respected mentor and professional became a living example of resilience, competence, and courage. She had reclaimed her identity, reshaped her environment, and inspired others to believe in themselves. In every interaction, every project, and every quiet word of encouragement, she proved that true potential is often hidden in plain sight, waiting for the chance to be recognized. By the time the year ended, Samantha had not only solidified her place in the company but had also transformed the culture in subtle but lasting ways. She walked through the same halls she had once mopped in silence, now met with nods, smiles, and genuine acknowledgement. And though she had risen professionally, the most important change was within herself. She believed in her own value, and nothing could take that away. Samantha stood at the edge of the office balcony, the city lights of Boston glittering below like a sea of possibilities. The hum of the building around her was no longer just background noise. It was a reminder of everything she had overcome, From the quiet janitor who swept floors unnoticed to the mentor and strategist who had saved the company, she had come a long way. She reflected on the journey, the sleepless nights spent learning systems she was never asked to master, the moments of doubt when she wondered if anyone would ever notice her, and the decision to step forward when it mattered most. Every risk, every choice had led her here. She realized that true success had never been about approval, applause, or recognition from others. It was about acknowledging her own abilities, trusting herself, and taking action when it counted. Her courage, intelligence, and perseverance had not only transformed her own life, but had also opened doors for those who had been overlooked for years. She had become a mentor, a guide, and a symbol of what was possible when someone refused to remain invisible. The employees she had encouraged now spoke up, shared their ideas, and reshaped their teams, proof that her impact went far beyond the walls of her own office. Samantha smiled softly, feeling a quiet satisfaction that no words of praise could match. She had found value in herself, and that empowerment was unshakable. She no longer sought validation from those who had once dismissed her. Instead, she measured her worth in her actions, in the opportunities she created, and in the lives she touched. As she turned from the balcony, walking back toward the heart of the office, she felt it fully. The confidence, the respect, the sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, she was valued, and most importantly, she was free to shape her own path. Samantha had discovered the most important lesson of all. Success is not given. It is claimed through courage, skill, and the unwavering belief in oneself. And in that belief, she had become unstoppable.